Today, I'm going to give you my realistic views regarding Venezuela's future. So let's start.
Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com.
When you think about Venezuela, you think about this crisis economy and the turmoil and the terrible political situation and economic situation and so on and so on. So if you're watching from abroad, most likely it's the case, you don't understand Venezuela because you try to make a proxy of other situation on other country, and Venezuela has a very particular situation that you are not able to understand, and you most likely you are going to use proxy in order to try to understand it. By the way, this is a very logical position, but it's not accurate. And actually, most people within Venezuela don't actually understand the situation. And of course, one of the main goals of this video is try to understand the situation in order, of course, have the best decision making. Now, regarding Venezuela, many people want to compare Venezuela to a poor country in Africa or a former communist nation, and most of you think that we have communism and socialism. Is not the case. We have, I say this all the time, chronic capitalism. And when you're trying to, the situation is most likely going to be inaccurate if you don't know what you're doing. And the situation is like this. We had, of course, an 80% GDP collapse that it was due to self-inflicted wounds by the local government, of course, involving also situations outside like the price of crude oil or the sanctions. The sanctions didn't cause the economic collapse. However, they are hindering future growth. But still, well, something that we can discuss other day. And what happened is it's not just because of the price of crude oil went down and the economic collapse. It's many other reasons. A very poor mismanagement of the oil industry, a lot of bureaucracy like we have in Latin America, but Venezuela bureaucracy is probably the worst in Latin America. And I will say the bureaucracy in Venezuela is by far the worst thing about Venezuela. I mentioned that a bunch of times. However, Venezuela, on the future, what I see is going to be better. It's going to be way better than the situation that we have right now. However, it's not going to be this panacea that many people are thinking. And for instance, people in Venezuela, within Venezuela, they think that Venezuela is going to fix when we had the social benefits that we had on the 80s and some benefits that we had on the early 2000s, like access to Cadivi. Cadivi is this system when you can access to cheap currency in order to travel abroad, or you had a lot of, you had free healthcare, that's not the case, or free education, that actually we still have it to a certain degree. So Venezuela is not going to become this social utopia that we had with social welfare, like we had on the 80s, not going to be the case. And also Venezuela is not going to be an easy place to start over. However, Venezuela, on the near future, I'm talking maybe let's say 10 years, so I have a bigger time frame, is going to be a place with more opportunities that the average citizen has right now. This is something that most Venezuelans are not understanding. That if Venezuela improves, and I think it's going to be the case, improves, I'm not saying it's going to be great or excellent, it's just going to improve due to natural causes, you're going to have more opportunities that you have right now, but it's not like Venezuela is going to become like the United States or what it used to be the United States, or it's not going to become this Saudi Arabian nation for the crude oil, or this Gulf nation, or it's not going to become something like Singapore or Hong Kong or a place like that. But it's going to be way better than we have right now. And actually, the bottom of the situation, I always mention, that is on the year 2017. It was awful that year, all of the social turmoil and hyperinflation. We had a bunch of things, bad things going on back then. But it's not going to be the case in the future. Of course, we're going to have still a bunch of issues like a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of caveats that are going to come with the situation, but it's going to be a place with more opportunities compared to what we have right now. But there are Venezuelan things that the situation is going to improve just because you're going to get easy. It's going to be easy to find a good paying job that you just have to, do the bare minimum. That's not going to be the case. I can guarantee that. But it's going to be a place that if you work hard, if you invest in yourself and develop a good career, a good skill, a good trade, you can actually make something about yourself in the future. Not at the moment, because at the moment it's not the case. Most people are impoverished. They have very terrible salaries. However, there is a lot of good things for the future. This is something that I want to discuss. First, I have to talk about the good things about Venezuela. Great location on the north of South America. So it's a great hub for logistics, for travel and connectivity, and so on. Also, a beautiful place to know. We have a lot of beautiful natural landscapes, beaches, mountains, cities, and actually a very well-connected country. So it's not as difficult in order to go on the road, and just on a few hours drive, you can reach most of the major Venezuelan hubs. And of course, we have to talk about oil, by far the largest oil reserves, proven reserves on the world, but actually we have natural gas, iron ore, gold, silver, and so much. And also you have to add soft commodities. Venezuela is a good country regarding agriculture. However, this particular side of the Venezuelan economy hasn't been completely developed. Also, we have to talk about human capital. Venezuela has a great human capital regarding, we have a bunch of people graduated on STEM degrees, accounting, and many other major skills that you might need. But also we have a bunch of people with good trades like welding, people on IT, people on construction, people, and actually recently Venezuela just won a robotics championship worldwide on Singapore. So shout out to you guys from Zulia. Those kids, actually they deserve that gold medal. And that proves that Venezuela has great human capital. And actually that's one of the reasons of this big migration that we had on the past decade. Over 7 million people left the country because they are doing a geo arbitrage regarding their human capital. A lot of talented people that just left the country because they thought that they could have better economic opportunities abroad. Now, talking about the bad things, the main thing, I will say the only one of the few things bad about Venezuela, but with a lot of impact, is the terrible mismanagement by the authorities and the people in charge. It is what it is. Now, many Venezuelans and some people abroad think mistakenly that the only way that in order to improve on the future is removing the current government and their cronies and their allies from the country. And most likely, first, it's not going to be the case. But secondly, this growth is going to happen despite of them. So it's still going to happen regardless if they are in charge or not. And the other reason is that many people, the politicians in Venezuela, are terrible. So the opposition politicians that we have, actually, they have been proven to be corrupt, inept, and they don't care about the country. However, the current politicians that we have on charge, they are poised and motivated in order to generate some economic growth. I'm not saying, they are Milton Friedman or something like that. So it's not going to be the case. They're not going to become libertarians, or they're not going to become like Bukele on El Salvador. So if you're expecting that, please just disregard that thought. However, they are in a position at this moment in time in history that they need to see further economic growth in order to remain in power for the long future. So yet again, what is going to happen? Well, like I said, we had an 80% GDP collapse. That it was an artificial collapse because basically it was on purpose that they did that thing, because they are motivated to stay in power, and at the moment, according to their political logic, is to impoverish the country in order to have more power for the population. Right now, it's not the case because they overdid it, and right now they need economic growth, and because they have to sustaining a government is hard and it's expensive. And right now, they need to sustain their government, their local armed forces, the local policemen, the local bureaucrats, and so on and so on. And you need to generate revenue for that. At the moment, the oil industry is very harmed by all of these policies. Remember, we used to produce 3 million barrels of crude oil. We hit a bottom on 2020 of 400,000. Right now, we are on 800,000. But we can go over 1 million, 1.5 million, even 2 million on the next 5 to 10 years. After that, the rest of the economy that should trickle down to the rest of the economy and generate more incentives for, of course, services, industry, and so on. So what we're going to see in the future, especially for the average Venezuelan. Right now, the average Venezuelan feels, and they're not mistaken, that they have very little opportunities in the country, terrible salaries, and so on. And actually, that's very accurate. However, the situation is better than compared to 2017. On 2023, we have more access to goods and services. We don't have the quote-unquote inflation that most people watch on the news. Actually, the economy is de facto dollarized, and inflation is actually USD measured inflation that you don't see that on the mainstream channels. So if the economy is de facto dollarized, so you don't have to worry about hyperinflation unless, the United States hyperinflates their own currency. Well, that's a discussion for another day. Anyways, after that, we have substantially better standards of living compared to 2017. So that's an improvement, a delta. Of course, compared to the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, we were right here, and those years are not going to come back. However, on the future, Venezuela is going to be, we have opportunities right now. I mean, there are opportunities for the long term in order to establish before everything starts to unfold. For instance, if you're a trader, by the way, any chance, this is in Venezuela, this will be like buy the dip moment. So you buy low, and after that you sell high. We're not on the bottom. The bottom was on 2018, 2019. Right now we are far from the bottom, but way further from the top. It's going to be a different top. It's going to be a different status quo that we had when Venezuela was quote unquote rich. So on the next future, I see more multinationals on the country. I see more access to financial services, credit, and so on. I see more business opportunities for the future, not for the moment. And you have to think long term. You have to think on a bigger time frame. And if you are doing things for the short term in Venezuela, you're going to be mistaken, and probably it's going to cost you. So at the end, I see, of course, further economic growth, further GDP growth, more companies, more international presence, more service, more tourists, international tourists. So the opportunities are going to increase, little by little. It's not going to be, like one day to another, Venezuela is going to become rich again, because probably it's not going to be the case. However, a better situation that will place Venezuela regarding GDP per capita on a top 5 place in Latin America, where they should be, next to Argentina and Mexico and Brazil. And I'm not very bullish on Chile, by the way. Same thing in Panama, but they have done their own thing. Maybe Uruguay, that kind of place, on next 10 years, 20 years. I don't know when, I'm not a sorcerer. I'm not a witchcraft thing. I'm an analyst. I see the good things and the bad things. So the future is going to be better in Venezuela, but it's not going to be just, Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong future. It's going to be an above average Latin American nation. And that's my take for the moment.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again, and have a nice day.